Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 6th Annual CS Talks. I'm Dan August Cordero of Corcoran Sunshine Marketing Group, and today we'll be discussing Lantern House, the development at 515 West 18th Street in West Chelsea, New York, developed by the Related Companies. Now under construction, Lantern House is slated to have our first move-ins in January of 2021, and we're happy to announce that we've been the fastest selling new development launch of 2020. What a year. The architecture of Lantern House is designed by Heatherwick Studio, who's also been responsible for the vessel at Hudson Yards, as well as the new Pier 55 or Little Island as part of Hudson River Park. And I'm joined today by the interior designers of Lantern House, Elliot March and James White of March and White Design. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Dan, great to be here.
So just as a brief introduction of March and White Design for those viewing today, March and White have designed really everything from members clubs, restaurants, super yachts, and luxury residences around the world. And March and White Design are really dedicated to creating experience-centric design that inspires true emotions. That's absolutely true at Lantern House. March and White there have devised an inspired setting, developing interiors that are in unison with the exterior design by Thomas Heatherwick. Known for their layered material-driven aesthetic, they skillfully combine a rich palette in neutral tones to create a warm ambiance that speaks to the resident's experience. Related has really prioritized craftsmanship at Lantern House and quality craftsmanship. For instance, the brick on the facade of the building is laid by hand, but they've also taken this approach with the interiors at Lantern House, with examples such as the chevron-laid flooring throughout the residences. And this has resulted in a strong yet elegant aesthetic with fresh, radiant spaces that channel a voluptuous tranquility through texture, surface, and depth. So beginning with Heatherwick Studios' architectural concept, Elliot March and James White have employed a lavish material palette that is both confident yet maintains a sense of comfort. Polished sophistication with an edge. That's what we like to call it. So gentlemen, as we get started, first of all, how are you and where are you today?
Good, Dan. Yeah, no, it's great to be here on CS Talks. I'm here in LA. It's 9 o'clock here. We've had our first rains in 170 days, so everything is good now, and the sun is shining.
Hi, and I'm here in London, where we're 5 o'clock in the evening now. As you can imagine, there's been a bit of rain today being in London, but
well, that balances it all out. That balances all out. Well, I'm in Newport today. It's a beautiful day here, and I'm sitting in front of my big bay window, which of course was part of the inspiration behind Lantern House. So I thought that would be a fitting place to be. So James and Elliot, you've designed a new model residence for us at Lantern House, a beautiful 3-bedroom, but you've also done all of the interiors throughout all of Lantern House, the kitchens, the baths, the amenity spaces. So can you tell us, what your original thoughts were and what attracted you to work on a development like Lantern House?
Yeah, I'll jump in first. I mean, for us, it was really all about the architecture. So generally, when we start with the building, we look at the architecture and we see what that is. And very evidently, it was going to be something very expressive and interesting for us that Thomas had come up with. So initially attracted to that. And I think being on board, like you said, having to do all the interiors, we came on, 3.5 years ago, and it was really a building we could design from the inside out. And really had that conversation with Thomas a lot earlier on in the process, and really inform how we develop these bay windows that we're developing and make a conversation with the interior.
Yeah, and I'd add the location really attracted us as well. You've got this incredible location just under the High Line, with all the heritage and the character that the Chelsea neighborhood brings. It's an ideal location for a building like Lantern House. In terms of the concept, we began looking at the history of the area, really picking up on the warehouses, the nightclubs and galleries, especially the kind of red brick townhouses and brownstones that became really nice references to layer into the story.
Yeah, I think the results has been really interesting because the building itself kind of has that kind of maritime warehouse feel, yet still feels residential and homey. So it's kind of you guys have done a great job striking a real balance there. And I think the process, at least as far as I've kind of experienced it, has been a really holistic one between the development of the interiors and the exteriors together, really at the same time. Can you talk a little bit about the process and what it was like to work with the team at Heatherwick Studio for the development of Lantern House?
Yeah, it was super interesting, super fun, and I think, you know, just alluding back to what I said earlier, the bay windows were the focal point of the design, primarily with that interior connection. And it was a real back and forth between us and Heatherwick Studio about, you know, how are these expressed on the inside? How do we form these windowsill details, the bench details and the upper and lower bubbles? And it was just really interesting to have that conversation to figure out how the light transmitted through the windows, the impact it would have on the interiors, and how we could really respond to the architecture and have that conversation.
And the result, you know, as far as I can see, is that everything is very kind of tactile in terms of how it's resulted. Why did you end up there? You could have gone a very different direction.
Yeah, we really wanted to kind of the interior to relate to the exterior, as Elliot was saying, and that also came into the materiality. We wanted a real focus on texture. You know, you think about the handcrafted brick. How could we mirror that on the interior? So you come to the kitchens of the apartments. We wanted to do something that felt more crafted. So we kind of played with this kind of scalloped ribbed wood texture for the cabinets in the kitchen. So everything that we brought into the interior felt like it has a texture and a way of light hitting it and creating this kind of atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny, you know, when you talk about atmosphere, because the number one comment that we get from buyers and brokers looking at the condominiums at Lantern House is they say it feels like home, which is kind of interesting. So
yeah.
Can you just talk about how, did you do that purposefully, or is that just the end result of your, you know, magic formula?
It'd be a great thing to say. We always, you know, we've had a lot of experience in single family homes as well. And,
Right.
you know, I think the main thing that comes through when we design homes is warmth and authenticity, Dan. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how do we bring that into sort of projects like this? It's really interesting for us, you know, and I think it comes back to the materiality. And also it's really moving away from that, you know, sort of formulaic white box type interior scenario into something that's a lot more layered, a lot more warm, a lot more authentic, that people can actually resonate now in today's market.
Mm-hmm. So is that what your homes are like, or what makes an ideal home? What are your homes like?
I think there's also a sense of visual comfort that you need. You know, you want to have you know, a sense of proportion and symmetry in the space. Yeah, my home's here in London and has a bay window, which is important. You know, when you think about how you frame a room and set up symmetry, yeah, I think that adds to the feeling of home. If you can get the proportions and that symmetry right, you can see in the shower rooms at Lantern House, you know, the bathrooms, the way that we proportion this space and set out the bath. You know, it feels right and it makes you relaxed, I think.
Yeah, I think that's very evident on the interiors, and I think it's really important. I mean, many developments are, you know, they start with the architecture on the outside, they design it outside first, and then on the inside, we're kind of left to whatever, to make rooms where maybe there was meant to be a room or there wasn't. And sometimes you end up with very unusual window conditions. So, you know, these beautiful bay windows certainly give a rhythm to the architecture, but also to the rhythm on the interior as well. And your point about symmetry and proportion is absolutely correct. I think that's part of why people are responding so well to Lantern House, and why it necessarily feels like home to them.
That's great to hear.
Now, so let's talk a little bit about the model residence that you've designed. That's Residence 519. So that's a 3-bedroom, 3-bath home that's facing north and east. So could you talk a little bit about your kind of approach to it and how you started to think about not only the interior design, the kitchens, baths, and flooring and that kind of thing, but how you decided to fit it out for?
Yeah, so we've created a process that we call experience-centric design, as you mentioned at the start. And this is really about researching into how people live, move, work, and play in a space. So it's putting the kind of the human user at the front of the design process. So we wanted our interior to really communicate that, to work through and understand how people are going to live in the space. So here for the residents, it was crucial that this worked at different times of the day. We really thought about the transitions of space, how it changes. Right, Elliot?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely what you're saying there, James. We always think programmatically how the space is going to flow and function. And I think particularly you see a living room shot up there. We're really thinking about, where do you take breakfast? Where do you take a meeting on the laptop? We've got these beautiful expressive bay windows there. We created this kind of ledge that you could work there on the laptop taking a call or doing some work, and then in the evening that kind of doubles up as a bar. So again, trying to get sort of different uses out of little elements was really important to us to kind of create that sort of holistic flow from day to evening.
Yeah, I love this shot. I mean, this is a photograph from the model residence you designed, and it really helps to illustrate kind of how people might live in the home today. I mean, being able to gather around the kitchen counter, of course, we've gotten used to that. But tell me about this bar that you've designed in the window, in the bay window.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great space to look out into New York. It's just a great moment, and it can just be so many different things. Like I say, just rolling up there with the laptop and and doing a call, checking an email, and then we thought about how do you could actually how do you dress that in the evening as actual bar as well if you got friends over. So these little features, I think, really exemplify how we live today, which is very different. There's a lot more flow, there's a lot more dual purpose, and I think buyers are really resonating with that.
Yeah. Remember when dining tables were just for dining? I think we've got to come up with a different name for them now that they're really, everything from Zoom school, home office, broadcast studio. I mean,
absolutely, yeah.
True,
the kids' home study table, yeah.
And how did you now at Lantern House? Each of the bay windows spans both an upper and a lower. So this rendering is actually showing a lower window, which has that kind of banquette seating. How do you think differently about the upper versus the lower bay window?
I think the first thing, Dan, is you're probably kind of, it's really a perception of space. You feel like you're either, the floor's going away from you, or the window's going away from you, or coming to you. And I think that changes the experience in the space. So I think people naturally gravitate towards one or the other. But really, I think making use of these as well. So you can see in this view here, we've got this kind of bench element, and it allows you to do, it could be a reading perch, it could be, you could be sitting there with a book, you could be, having a drink. It's just such a multifaceted element that I think, getting some function out of these brilliant spaces was something we wanted to really do here and make them usable. Yeah, for sure. I personally would love to cuddle up in that throw and take a little nap in the sun. What's your favorite? What's your favorite, Dan? Upper or lower? Do you have a preference? I see the merit in both. I think it depends on the home, actually, which is interesting. I think as we go through the building, and the building is really taking shape now in terms of construction, there are certain residences where I really appreciate the lower, which is the one here with the banquette, especially if it has an eat-in kitchen or it's something I want to use it for seating, for instance, whether it's extra seating in my living room or for my dining table. I think it comes in useful. And some of the other homes, I like the opposite, the upper window, because it just gives me maybe a little bit more floor space and a little bit more sky. So, I mean, I'm divided. The market's divided. We've sold them evenly. So, it's this kind of optionality and personalization that people really get interested in today, because they have something that, not everybody has. Now, another piece of that, right, is you've designed two different interior palettes for the building as well. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you did it and how they're different? Yeah, I think I'll start, James. I mean, the two different palettes, a lighter and a much warmer palette. I think they offer, again, like you said earlier, kind of flexibility, choice. and just a kind of different feeling in the space. The darker kitchen cabinetry is really kind of it's sort of interesting. It's super warm. It's just a different feel, and the lighter palette, just kind of refracts a lot of the light around the space. So I think choice is really, what we come back to here, and offering buyers that choice to buy into.
Yeah, you get the kind of contrast that comes through as well, don't you? When you look at the different palettes, one definitely brings a little more contrast, which can be interesting in the interior.
Yeah, it's also fun to try to get couples to decide on the same one without of course changing them too. So other than the bay window, I mean, what other ways do you think people are going to live in Lantern House, and how are they going to live differently in Lantern House than they would at maybe other developments?
Well, I think the amenity space that we've got here at Lantern House is just incredible. And this was so much fun to design. We were,
right.
it was. Yeah, you've got the High Line running overhead, and the opportunity to kind of create this beautiful courtyard that all the amenities wrap around with, overlooking onto the High Line. So I think it's a great space to start bringing a bit of atmosphere, and we could start taking some of our learning from members clubs and some of the hospitality projects over the year, and starting to look at how can we make these spaces again transition through the day. How can, almost like in a private members club, you can work, you can in the evening the space moves to more of an atmospheric feel. The dining room table can be a workspace that becomes, as we were saying, like in the apartments, the private dining room can be a space to work and a space for entertaining in the evening. You can see in some of the imagery here the kind of atmosphere and color that we wanted to bring to the space.
And I think you can also see some of the warmth coming through. So you can see we've brought through the hand-laid brickwork from the outside to the inside. Right. And that was a really important conversation for us to set up where we could and connect architecture and interiors. And I think, as James has sort of said, this hospitality feel that we bring to all of our projects, just, the idea is to create warmth, homeliness, and make an inviting space that, you can have fun in and entertain.
Right. It definitely feels like you're leveraging all your experience designing membership clubs here in this rendering in the library lounge with the fireplace, and you've got the vertical wall kind of separating the different seating areas, and the banquettes in the back by the window. You really feel like
symmetry again, huh?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's great for people watching too, but it feels kind of separate enough. And I love all the different banquettes, of course, during the day, especially in work from home territory. If you're kind of had enough of living in your apartment for the day and you want to go downstairs and have something that's more semi-public, it's a great spot, and it's a great opportunity for that. So Lantern House really feels designed in a way for 2020 and beyond. But
yeah, I think there's a great especially with families, wanting that overspill of space into the amenities. Again, that's something we really thought about from the start, and catering to that want and to that need. So different spaces integrating with one another and allowing that kind of use and overspill really, I think, came to the front of the planning when we're designing these spaces.
Yeah. And throughout the building, what would you describe as kind of your signature touches? If I had to point to a few March and White design kind of trademark items, what would you look to?
I think in the lobby, there's this incredible barnwood that we brought in, that is something that comes from our yachting background, and a material that it's really nice to bring to residential. And then I think, Elliot, a lot of the detail that runs through the apartments, right, the residences.
Yeah, I think in the residences, there's we've designed all the millwork is designed custom, but certainly the pulls, the bronze pulls on the kitchen cabinetry and on the millwork, that's something we designed specific for the project. So I think there's a lot of detail coming through, and even as James mentioned, in these fins here in this current image,
Wow.
You know, really about allowing that use of space. Yeah, you can see some of the kind of details that we designed here specifically for Lantern. So it's about really composing details in a beautiful way together in different materials and the junction between them. And I think that's where, when you look at, you look up close, you can really see the attention and effort that, both Related and ourselves have gone to, particularly in these residences, to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Personally, I love the countertops and just the rounded edges to them and that beautiful reveal. It really came out beautifully. I'm a little bit of a klutz, so I appreciate rounded edges here and there.
Yeah, and I think that also sort of leans back into, if you've got children as well, it's just thinking about those little details that are going to be an issue, when you move in there with your two kids. So just being cognizant of the whole demographic that we're designing for here.
Yeah. Well, that's funny, Elliot. I know you have a young baby now. So what are your homes like? James and Elliot, could you talk to us about your homes and how did they influence or infuse, your approach to designing residences at Lantern House?
Yeah, well, I think mine is, I'll just jump in first, James. Mine's very much about using different spaces for different purposes. So the space I'm in now is my study that, also has the bar in that becomes, the social hub when we get friends together in the evening, as well as somewhere you can work from in the day as well. So, that kind of dual programming of use of space is something that, I really like to bring into interiors. And just going back to the work bar in the model residence, I think that just kind of resonates with how we design as a firm. So the different uses. I don't want James. You want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm in London, and as you know, it's a bit colder than LA, and it rains more. So I think my house here is Victorian, and there's a lot of history to it, but you need to make sure in the interior that you get warmth and comfort. So mine's really focused around the family, and you can see just behind me the kind of the TV, the way that the sofa is arranged around for that. It's a great family space. And then also the bay window, which is just out of shot, but it gives you that sense of, a little bit of extra warmth.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, how do you feel about your influence from yacht design as well? Does that infuse a lot of your work in residential?
Yeah, we started with designing residential apartments in London, which were highly detailed. And when we moved into the yachting world, there were so many similarities between residential and yachts and residential. And the biggest thing is this attention to detail on the surfaces. In a yacht, you're moving through your kind of, you have the rails that you hold on to as the yacht moves, but that means that you're up close to the materials and the textures. So that really gives us a focus on making sure the materials and textures feel right. Also means we research a lot into them and the coolest things that we can bring to residential.
Yeah, and I think that, James, that's how the barnwood, this resin dyed dip barnwood ended up from going from the yachting world that we did the R&D research into the, into these 20-foot high portals that frame the entrances to either side of the building and the lobby. It's just a great thing to bring through and to really, for buyers and owners to see these like little flashes of detail and say, oh, that's interesting, that's different, or for them to be able to tell their friends as they're bringing them through a story, and I think it's all about storytelling and, weaving that narrative on top of things that makes our interiors so homely.
Right. I would say that just having starting to walk buyers through the building, you really start to get to see them react to different things. So this barnwood that you mentioned, this green lacquered barnwood in the lobby, everyone walks up to it, they touch it, they absolutely go gaga for it. So it's amazing how some details can really be inspiring and really make that kind of emotional connection. So that's amazing. So I just have one more question as we talk about all the research and design that you've been doing. What do you think is the next trend in design? What's coming down the pike? What do you see happening over the next, I don't know, year or three, or as far as you can look ahead?
I think, Dan, we're seeing definitely a trend towards more authenticity in design. And I don't know whether that's because people are spending more times in their actual homes, but the spaces they're naturally gravitating to have a story, and just generally there's a push towards them feeling more authentic through the materials and through that story that's being told. So we're seeing a trend towards that. And also sort of conscious design as well. So the materials that are going into buildings, I think there's definitely a lot more thought about that. And obviously, as you know, Lantern's a LEED Silver building, which is fantastic. So, you know, I think we're seeing that trend really, really rising over the next sort of year, 2 years. James, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, and I think community as well, you know, and we can see, we spoke a little bit about the amenities, but having space that allows you know, a community in the building, space for families, space for people to work, you know, that really makes people feel like they belong. You know, and I think that's something that's going to be increasingly important in the future.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Well, James, Elliot, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for everyone for watching with us. It's part of CS Talks, and congratulations. I mean, Lantern House is the fastest selling new development launch of 2020. So it's in large part to your contribution. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
That's great. Dan, thanks for hosting us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.